Chargers head coach Jim Harbaugh talked to the media at the NFL owners' meetings, and he gave a very interesting perspective about the Chargers draft pick, saying that the 5th overall pick is actually like the 1st overall pick.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers together now for 8 seasons, but this is our 6th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys, as always, for making us your first listen. We appreciate the everydayers out there, and to make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Well, Daniel, we got to hear from our fearless leader at the coach's breakfast. Jim Harbaugh talked to the media, and he talked about a bunch of different things. His view on the 5th overall pick, checking in with Justin Herbert, the business side of the NFL with Keenan Allen. Also spoke high praises about Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. And then we're also going to wrap things up with the Chargers' latest signing of cornerback Kristian Fulton.
Yeah, very low risk, high reward type of player. But today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. David, we weren't expecting to get Jim Harbaugh sound bites, but it's a good thing anytime that we do, because he just has a way of talking that so different than Brandon Staley. You know, we were kind of swept away by Brandon Staley's car salesman, kind of snake oil salesman thing at the beginning because it felt so genuine and just never kind of lived up to it, right?
Yeah.
Jim Harbaugh is totally different, but it's fun in its own way. And he was talking about the 5th overall pick, and you could tell how excited he is for it. But the most interesting thing was just his reasoning for saying, hey, like, we don't have the 5th overall pick. The first 4 picks could be quarterbacks, meaning we basically have the 1st overall pick.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty interesting perspective here, but this is from Daniel Popper of The Athletic. There's going to be a great player at 5. In some ways, there's talk about 4 quarterbacks going in the first 4 picks, where if that happens, then the pick really becomes like the number 1 pick in the draft. If 4 quarterbacks go in the first 4 picks, that's not like having the 5th pick anymore. That's like having the number 1 pick of the draft for teams that have a great quarterback already. Well, the Chargers have a great quarterback. They got Justin Herbert, check there. So, and of course, it's kind of funny to me that Jim Harbaugh is continuously trying to campaign for J.J. McCarthy to be a part of those top 4 quarterbacks that go before the Chargers pick, because obviously if that happens, if he's able to impress upon these other QB needy teams that J.J. McCarthy is one of the guys that you need to take, then that opens things up for the Chargers to take whoever they want as the top number 1 player that's not a quarterback in the draft, and it's going to be their choice to have the pick of the litter.
Yeah, which is what kind of we talked about literally on yesterday's show with you. It's just, if the Chargers get to 5, they could have a decision between Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors. But the J.J. McCarthy thing is hilarious just because, you know, he has shot up draft boards recently, right? Yeah. He was not a guy that was considered a top 10 pick even a month ago, right? And now it's almost consensus that he's going to get taken within, you know, the top 4 to 6 picks at the very latest. You know, maybe it gets the Giants, but it doesn't feel like it would be very much further than that. And Jim Harbaugh, he was getting courted to be the Chargers head coach, has been out here saying that J.J. McCarthy is the best quarterback in this draft class, which is something literally no one is saying. No one is saying that. Like, you can make the argument for a top 5 pick. No one is saying J.J. McCarthy is the best quarterback in this draft, except for Jim Harbaugh. And it's a double-edged sword, right? He can get his guy paid, get his guy to be a top 5 draft pick, and also him being a top 5 draft pick really helps the Chargers, whether they decide, and as he said, they have possibilities if they want to trade back, right? Or come up and get the best quarterback in this draft class at 5, right? Or if he doesn't, hey, if we have to pick here, we're going to get a great player. So
they're not going to be taking J.J. McCarthy. So let's put that to bed 100% right now. They are not trading Justin Herbert. I'm sick and tired of seeing that ridiculous stuff being put out there. It's never going to happen. He is just campaigning to get J.J. McCarthy picked before the Chargers select at 5.
But to me, the other thing he's saying there is, if you want this pick, you're not going to pay the 5th overall pick price. Right? You're going to pay a hefty haul because this is the number 1 pick. If you want to get one of these guys, we're ready to go take one of these excellent players. We know there's going to be a great player there once it gets to us, if we decide to pick there. If you want it, it's going to cost you a lot. And if we take it and stay here, then we're going to get a really, really good player. So I thought it was interesting, and I think that is probably pretty in line with how they're thinking, keeping everything open, making that pick seem as valuable as they possibly can, and making J.J. McCarthy seem like the best quarterback of all time. But he also did talk about a quarterback who's much better than J.J. McCarthy, and that was Justin Herbert. And it was interesting hearing about, him checking up on Justin Herbert, basically saying like, hey, I just check in on him all the time and just say, like, what's going on? Like, I just want to know how his day is going, right? Which I thought was hilarious. And, hey, how are things going up on the ranch in Oregon and all those things? But it was also interesting, David, to see kind of how he sees the challenge of Justin Herbert and what he kind of wants to coach Justin Herbert, who he hasn't got to really have on the practice field yet.
Yeah,
until April 2nd. He couldn't stop telling us. April 2nd is the day.
Yeah, and of course the Chargers, get to meet with their players a little bit earlier because they have a new head coach. So that's
voluntarily,
why
I would expect a big turnout.
Right. That's why it's April 2nd there. But Coach Harbaugh on Justin Herbert's here. He says, I've gone through all his tape, all his throws. He can make them all, getting to know him, getting to know how much he is about team, about winning, how much he puts into it, how much he cares about it, being able to make that step to winning. I know that's why he's in it. And I think for me personally, I'm here for it 100% because I am tired of Justin Herbert continuously getting dragged because he hasn't got the wins to match up with an exorbitant talent that we all know that Justin Herbert has. So I am definitely wanting to see Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert team up and win a lot of football games, because then all of the questions about whether Justin Herbert's a winner or whether he can do it when it counts, all that stuff goes away when they start winning meaningful games and they start beating the big opponents and they start winning playoff games and hopefully a championship. Because if that happens, then there's nothing else you can say about Justin Herbert, because we know the talent's there. When the winning backs that up, then all the haters will be silent.
Yeah, and I think for him, now that he's seen everything, he sees what all Chargers fans see, right? And the reason Chargers fans get so upset and so protective is because they do watch Justin Herbert every week. They know how good he is, right? And I think it was just interesting, him saying, hey, I want to show him that the work that he's putting in is, going to turn into wins. And that, I'm willing to be the guy that's up for the challenge of coaching someone of his caliber. And he also talked about, having to talk to him about getting rid of his best player, right? And with Keenan Allen and his best weapon. And I thought he was interesting, very genuine, kind of very open about the Keenan Allen trade, and like somehow spun it in like a positive way. But it is one of those things I think that shows you, whereas Brandon Staley kind of started to lose things and it unraveled a little bit, it's like Jim Harbaugh is just unflappable. Like even with the, trading maybe the best offensive player from last year, and he's like kind of spinning it into a positive. And I thought it was interesting kind of how he handled that question.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it just very much had the feeling of it's not personal, it's just business when he was talking about it. And again, this is from Daniel Popper of The Athletic. Everybody does what's best for them. It's just very transparent. It's the business part. It's everybody does what's in their best interest. And Keenan, he made $23 million a year, and now he'll go play in Chicago. Who's got it better? Happy for Keenan Allen. And so, yeah, it just makes you feel like, this is not going to be a move that's going to get in the way of how he coaches the team or his confidence in winning or his ability to go out there and make the most out of what he has on the team. They tried to make it work. They spoke with the representatives. Unfortunately, it was not able to work. They got a 4th-round pick out of it, and now it's onward and upward to the future.
Yeah, and he also said he didn't talk to him after or before the trades, which I thought was interesting. Basically said, hey, we talked to his representatives, and that's kind of us talking to him, and that's kind of how it is. But he also just basically said, like, I understand. It's a business. Everyone has to do what's best for them. So, like, I understand Keenan Allen not wanting to take the pay cut, not taking the extension, and trying to do what's best for his family. And we have to do, understandably, what's best for this organization, and that's just the way that it had to go. But I thought he was just very open and transparent about it, and just kind of, he handled it with the same kind of care and same, just enthusiasm that he answered every question. Even it's like you're trading a franchise player away in Keenan Allen. So I thought that was interesting. But I also thought it was interesting that he thought that before Joey Bosa got hurt, that he was actually playing even better than Khalil Mack, and how excited he is to have both of those guys back. And also, randomly, why he thinks that Jordan McFadden, the 2023 5th-round pick, could be a center for the Chargers after playing guard and tackle in college. And we're going to get into more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, though, I have to tell you guys about Game Time, because Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun that you're going to have, because Game Time is the place for last-minute tickets. And if you don't want to stress about your tickets, you go to Game Time, because the Game Time guarantee means you're always going to get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. It also gives you all of the prices up front, so you know what you're getting, and you know you're getting a great deal before you check out. There's nothing worse than thinking you're getting a great deal, then getting to the checkout, then seeing there's $28 in service fees, and all of a sudden those tickets you thought you were getting at a great discount aren't nearly the discount that you thought that they were. With Game Time, what you see is what you get. With zone deals, you can also save 18% savings, because if you pick the section, Game Time will pick your seats for you, and that's why it's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. David, I want to get more into some of the things that Jim Harbaugh had to say when he was talking with the media from the NFL coaches meetings, or owners meetings, I should say. And I want to talk about what he had to say about Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, because one of the biggest decisions that the Chargers made in offseason was deciding, I think we thought in an ideal world, and I still feel like this to an extent, right? You keep one receiver and you keep one edge rusher, and one of each of the other have to go, right? And so at least you don't deplete either of those position groups totally, and you're still keeping, a Pro Bowl level player at each of those positions to build around, right? The Chargers decided to keep both edge rushers and got rid of both the receivers, which we didn't see coming. But I think after hearing, just how highly, Jim Harbaugh thinks about these players and thinks how big it is going to be for Jesse Minter to have Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack implementing and being there in this new defense, it's a little easier to understand why he's so excited about keeping both the guys.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, if you're bringing in a defensive coordinator from the college ranks and bringing him up to the NFL, having a guy like Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa to be able to spearhead your defensive effort is definitely not a bad way to go. Another one here coming from the GOAT, Daniel Popper here. Thrilled to be coaching Khalil Mack. You watch what Khalil did, the kind of year he had, playing every game. Joey was having a better year than Khalil through that stretch until he got hurt. I tell you guys, really thrilled for Jesse Minter and what Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa and Thule are going to do in this system. Really excited about that. I'm excited about it too. If Joey Bosa can stay on the football field, I think we've all seen and know that when Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa and Tuli Pelotu are all out there at the same time getting after the quarterback, it is a thing of absolute beauty and just terror for opposing offenses to have to deal with, trying to figure out who they're going to double team, how they're going to block all these guys, and the different ways that they can get to the quarterback. It is very, very intimidating. So having all of those guys at your disposal for a brand new defensive coordinator, I'm sure is a great business decision for them.
Yeah, and what it told me, at least as far as his reaction right now, compared to what his reaction was to having all those guys before he knew was going to stay, right, is now he's had a chance to get into all the tape, and he knows exactly kind of what he's going to get for these guys. And for him to say, Joey Bosa was playing better than Khalil Mack last year in a season that Khalil Mack had 17 sacks, I think shows you how highly he thinks of him, right? I think he knows that, Khalil Mack is not going to take that personally, but I do think it is a boost for someone like Joey Bosa, right, who has been much maligned by this fan base. Obviously, he has a much different take and has a much different kind of temperature on how he feels about Joey Bosa than a lot of Chargers fans do right now, but what he sees is kind of what we've always seen. It's just like, hey, when he's out there, he's still great. And I think that's kind of turned with the fan base where it's like, hey, even when he's out there, he's bad. No, last year when he was out there, he was playing at a ridiculous level. And when you had the three of Thule and Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, it was borderline unstoppable, right? One of the things that Jesse Minter is really, really good at is finding ways to get pressure. One of the things that helps your defense, makes your secondary better, makes the whole unit better, is having a great pass rush. Yeah. And that's why it's so important. So to have all three of these guys, and we basically laughed Jesse Minter out of the room in his introductory kind of words to Chargers fans when he's like, I'd like to keep all three of them if I can. Jesse Minter, you get your wish.
Got what he wanted.
Yeah, you get your wish. And I think the nice thing about all three of these dudes, all of them are plus in pass rushing and run defending. So having all three of those guys and the kind of flexibility that gives you, I think is huge. But it's also huge to be really good on the offensive line. And he talked about why the offensive line is so important to him and to the team in general. And he said, the offensive line is the only position that doesn't rely on anyone else, but everyone else relies on them, right? And it's so true. He said, hey, this is when the defensive lineman would come to me and be like, no, I don't need those offensive linemen. I do not rely on them. And he would say, well, do you want the offense to have a 12-play drive so you can get a little bit of rest?
You like those?
Yeah, exactly. And he's like, they all say, hey, yeah, I guess so. I guess I do need him.
Yeah.
But what I didn't expect, David, because I know obviously how important he thinks the offensive line was, but one guy that he singled out is a guy not a lot of people were talking about, and that is Jordan McFadden, a guard/tackle the Chargers drafted in the 5th round of 2023. Got a little bit of run, but not very much last year. But Jim Harbaugh said he liked what he saw from him on tape, gave him a special shout-out, and even said he could be playing a new position.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan McFadden, I think, had some good moments, had some not so good moments in his playing time. I think definitely some things to be excited about for the future. But, for Jordan McFadden from Jim Harbaugh, he said, he could be the possible fit at center. He's got versatility. He's got the athleticism. He's got the feet. He's got the intelligence and intangibles, I've been told. So there's all kinds of possibilities when you think about and anticipate. But, hey, we all got to get together in the same room, and au naturel will go about it. So definitely high praise for Jordan McFadden and a potential position change for him. But, I mean, I think for a guy that gets picked in the later rounds, you just want to try to find your way in the starting lineup, however you can make that happen. So I think this is a good thing for McFadden, and if he's able to make that switch, obviously we know that there is no long-term center of the Chargers right now. That could be a position that he's able to work himself into.
Or that's what Jim Harbaugh wants people to think, right? Which either way, it serves a purpose, right? If people are thinking that he thinks that Jordan McFadden is the center of the future, maybe they're not trying to trade in front of the Chargers to take a center if one's about to fall to them, right? That's in theory something that could happen. I think the other thing here is just, with Jordan McFadden, he played 163 offensive snaps, 5 pressures allowed in 103 pass blocking snaps. So, 1 every 20 dropbacks isn't that bad as far as giving up pressure. 1 sack allowed, whatever. But it was interesting because he said, hey, this is from his tape last year, right? This is from his NFL tape. These aren't pre-draft priors and things like that. Yeah. I think the other thing here is, hey, maybe this offensive line has a little bit more depth than we thought it does, right? Or also just this, like, if he can play center, I mean, this is the part that stood out to me. I've been told, right? Yeah. That means someone's telling him, someone's giving them the notes on this. And what it tells me is somebody brought this up to him as they're evaluating this roster, as they're evaluating the Chargers roster, which is what a lot of this coaching staff has been doing since they took over. We saw something in Jordan McFadden that maybe he isn't just a guard who used to play tackle. Maybe he's a guy who used to play tackle that could potentially play center. Yeah. So I think that's really interesting. And if you can get some competition for Bradley Bozeman and he wants to push one of those other guards for, some playing time, so be it. And, if Jordan McFadden is that good and he ends up being the center of the future, good for him. I mean, I think, it's still a position of need, still a good chance they address it. But he's saying, hey, we might have something right there. I also thought, David, it was interesting. I know you brought this up, and something that you liked, though, was just him talking about the division and kind of the challenge that he likes that he's taking with this Chargers team and why he was excited to take this Chargers team and to see what he could do with them was just, hey, he's not afraid to go up against some legends like Andy Reid and Sean Payton.
Yeah, I think we've had coaches in the past say that they're up to the challenge, but when you have a guy with the pedigree of a Jim Harbaugh saying it, I think it just has a little bit more staying power here. Sure. Another quote from Daniel Popper here of The Athletic. Are you man enough to be in the division with the Chiefs and Andy Reid and Sean Payton and the Raiders? Antonio Pierce, great guy, great coach, great players, Patrick Mahomes, world champions, all that. Let's step up. Let's see. I want that challenge, and I know Justin Herbert wants that challenge as well. And I want to see the Chargers dethrone the Chiefs. I want to see them own the division for the first time in over a decade, like they used to, where they had the division for 4, 5, 6 straight seasons. It's been a long time since the Chargers have been able to dominate and have been in a position to dominate. Now I feel like they have a leader that is capable of restoring the Chargers to greatness in the AFC West, and I want to see it in short order.
Yeah, I think, just knowing that Justin Herbert's not going into these games with a Grand Canyon size gap between the head coach he has standing on his sideline and the head coach that they're going up against, I think is massive, right? And I also think, if Jim Harbaugh in his RV, which he's actually staying in, and Greg Roman, who's also staying in an RV, can have the offseason where they're cooking up a plan to take down the Chiefs in year one, build them at both a statue outside of SoFi Stadium for all I care. These dudes are weirdos. But it felt like they had to do something different because they haven't stood any chance against the Chiefs in the past. They got close one time in 2018 in the Patrick Mahomes era, and that is it. It's time for some new blood, and at least you feel like they have a better chance with Jim Harbaugh than they've had with any of their previous head coaches in the last decade plus. So I think that's a plus. I believe him when he says he's down for it. He wouldn't have taken the job unless he felt like he could dethrone the Kansas City Chiefs and go head-to-head with the likes of Sean Payton and go head-to-head with some of these other guys in the division. But we do have more to get to because the Chargers did make a critical signing at a critical position at cornerback, signing Kristian Fulton, a low-risk, high-reward type of player that if they can figure it out, it could be a steal of a signing. And we're going to get into that and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, though, I need to tell you guys about FanDuel because right now is the best time of the year to be betting on any kind of sports because the biggest college basketball tournament in the world is happening right now, and it's games all day, every day. If you missed out on the flurry of games, right, the 16 games per day, I mean, you probably have a little bit more energy than I have right now, but it is madness. There's nothing else like it. It was so much fun being able to do that, but the great news is there's still so much more left. I mean, this thing is just starting to heat up. There's more upsets, more big games on the way, so you can say goodbye to the busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. So even if your bracket's busted, it doesn't mean you can't have fun on this college basketball right now, especially because new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. And that's really that simple, David. You could pick the biggest favorite in the world on the money line. As long as they win, you get those $200 in free bets. And all you have to do is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. David, let's get into a different type of news because the Chargers late last week, of course, they signed him when we weren't doing a show, which is awesome. They signed Kristian Fulton. We knew last week that he was going to go out to dinner with the Chargers brass, that he had a meeting with them last Thursday, but we didn't find out until Friday that the Chargers actually found a way to get a deal done. And we don't know what the deal is yet, but it's interesting, David, because on the outside looking in, you're looking at a player who really, really struggled in 2023, which shows you, I think, what the Chargers are kind of expecting here. They expect to get a bounce-back season from Kristian Fulton. But I do want to tell everyone to make sure they're checking out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever national 24/7 sports streaming channel where you can get every sport covered by the local experts that only Locked On can provide, the people that are covering their team every single day. So make sure you guys go subscribe to that so you don't miss the first ever 24/7 national sports streaming channel. But David, this is a low-risk, high-reward type of signing for the Chargers going after someone like Kristian Fulton.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing here to I think to focus on is that Kristian Fulton's only 25 years old. So, I mean, yes, he's coming off of a down season, probably a couple of down seasons if we want to really put it accurately here. But I feel like this is a prime candidate that if he gets that change of scenery, gets in front of some different coaches, that I think that could be what he needs. And according to Teron Davenport of ESPN NFL Nation, who covers the Titans, he actually picked the Chargers over several other teams. He says former Titans cornerback Kristian Fulton turned down offers from the Bengals, the Broncos, and the Cardinals to sign with the Chargers, per source. Fulton goes to LA on a 1-year deal. So that tells me that Kristian Fulton believed what Jim Harbaugh and Jesse Minter and the staff was selling to him on the opportunity to bounce back and to be able to create more value for himself in this system versus the other teams that were offering him a deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Bengals are obviously an interesting one just because it's like, I think, the Chargers could easily argue they're a better opportunity, at least for team success-wise, than those other teams outside of the Bengals, right, who are only a couple seasons removed from a Super Bowl run and, have been a perennial playoff team when Joe Burrow's healthy, obviously, right? But he decided to come here. And I mean, Lou Anarumo, obviously an excellent defensive coordinator in Cincinnati, too. Doesn't get nearly the respect he deserves. But, yeah, I mean, that is part of it, right? I think you could see how much the Chargers wanted to get this done by having him go out to dinner with the team brass, right? By kind of whining and dining him a little bit. But it does work both ways, right? Because it is Kristian Fulton saying, hey, I'm not here for the money in 2024.
Right.
It is about money, right? It's not about money.
Right.
It's about so I can go make some money in 2025. And he feels like the best place that he can showcase that is with Jim Harbaugh and Jesse Minter's defense. So I think that is, partially the Jim Harbaugh effect. And part of the reason why I don't think it's going to be a very big contract once we finally get the details on it. But I think, as far as just why the Chargers did this, I mean, first of all, you just needed bodies at that position. Like in the worst case scenario, David, you have an outside starting cornerback opposite of Asante Samuel Jr., and you have it for cheap because right now you have nobody, right? You're also getting someone who's a former second-round pick, someone that we both remember evaluating and liking a few years ago when he came out of LSU, same draft as Justin Herbert, right? And I think the biggest difference is with Kristian Fulton is it's not just someone who you're saying, okay, well, I watched this guy and he definitely was a first-round pick and it never panned out at the NFL level. The last couple of years it hasn't panned out, but I think it is different because you have actually seen this guy play at a pretty high level. Like in 2021, he was playing, like one of the better corners in the NFL, and that's what you're kind of hoping you can rediscover.
Yeah, I think Stephen Hagland of Guilty as Charged put out some pretty good information about forced incompletions. And in 2021, he had forced 12 forced incompletions, which was tied for 18th in the league that year, and also had 11 pass breakups. So he was in there, and he was absolutely getting in the way of offensive players, making life very difficult. So we have seen success at the NFL level. Yeah, he's a couple years removed from it, but I also feel like, again, he's very young. I still feel like there's a very good chance for him to bounce back and to be able to recapture some of that play that he was able to provide in 2021.
Yeah, I mean, the forced incompletions is part of it. I mean, if you kind of filter it out to only people that had 200, coverage snaps that year, he ranked 8th out of 115 players that had 200 coverage
really
snaps.
good.
He was 9th in the NFL in pass breakups that year. His passer rating allowed 69.6. His completion percentage allowed sub 50, 48.4%.
Ridiculous.
But then last year, rating allowed of 129.3. He was 100th out of 125 eligible cornerbacks in forced incompletion percentage. He was 101st in pass breakups, right? So he's a little far removed from it. The thing, honestly, that worries me the most, I think that they can get some more out of him coverage-wise. The missed tackle problem is something that definitely concerns me because that's been a pretty consistent thing where it didn't used to be as bad as it was last year. 20.4% of his tackles he missed.
Yeah, the most by a long shot, too.
Yeah, and I mean, in 2022, 13.5, 21, 15, 20, 20, 11.8%.
Yeah,
so,
worse.
hey, if you can get closer to that 11.8%, that's something you can live with. 20.4% is just... That's downright awful.
Can't do that.
That's just bad. Hard to put that guy on the field. So he has to get better in multiple ways. And I think we're hoping the whole Chargers team will tackle better under this new regime. That'll be more of an emphasis, right? But I think no matter what with this pick, David, it is low risk, high reward. But I don't know if it changes a ton about what you feel like with the position group as a whole. It still feels like you need to add more to this position, even with the signing of Kristian Fulton.
Absolutely. I think this is just in line with most of the rest of the moves that the Chargers have made here in free agency, save for Will Dissly's 3-year deal. It's been a lot of 1-year, low money, prove it deals. But I think they've all been, very good concentrated moves at positions that needed the depth that they are providing. So I think this is another one where it doesn't preclude you from taking 1, maybe 2 corners in the draft because they still need to add talent to that position. But it's just another signing where it makes sense that the Chargers did it. And I feel like it just continues an offseason where a very concentrated approach at trying to provide depth at all positions for this Chargers team.
Totally agree with that. I mean, I think you still need a slot corner. The only guy you really have is John Taylor. Asante Samuel Jr. got benched doing it last year. You have to think that Mike Sainristil, a guy we talked about, Mikey Sainristil, is going to be high up on the Chargers draft board.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think you can just assume that Fulton is going to be your starter all year. If he wins the job because he's playing so great, good for him, right? But I just don't think you can put all of your eggs in that basket. And honestly, anyone in that cornerback room should be open for competition. I don't even think that Asante Samuel Jr. is unassailable, right? It should be an open competition because that was one of the worst units in the NFL last year, and it was just way below what they need to be this year if they're going to turn this defense around. So I like it, and this is kind of the other sneaky thing, David, with all of these 1-year deals, right? It's like any of these guys who turn it around are not going to get paid by the Chargers, but they might get paid by somebody else. So if Kristian Fulton balls out and has 6 picks this year, the compensatory pick the Chargers will have coming back because of that. Like if Bradley Bozeman turns it around.
Baby.
If Kristian Fulton turns it around, right? All of these guys could turn into potential comp picks down the road because of those 1-year deals and because of so many people wanting to come to play for Jim Harbaugh, play for Jesse Minter, to re-up their value, right?
Yeah.
And to give themselves a chance to be here for a year, be a part of something that they think is going to be a winning team, and then get back out there and cash in 2025. So all still goes according to the master plan, right? Outside of Keenan Allen, I think we've been big fans of pretty much every move the Chargers have made. So hopefully they keep it going. And as Joe Ortiz said, right, like the free agency is just beginning. It's not over yet. There's more moves that are going to be made. But that's going to do it for today's show. We might not be back with you guys tomorrow. If not, we'll be back with you guys on Thursday. Might even put a little bit of a buy or sell out there for the audience. Maybe you guys pick some buy or sells. Maybe mix that with a fan mail show on Thursday if that's when we're back here. But to make sure you guys don't miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. You can also find the show every day on our social media at Locked On LAC on Twitter, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, and on the Locked On Chargers Facebook page. You can also find me at Dan Talk Sports and David Drogemeyer at DroTalkSD on Twitter. But make sure you guys are back with us because it is your team every day, except for maybe tomorrow, but we're going to try to see what we can do there. But at the very latest, we'll be back with you guys on Thursday. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.